In 1986, 4 Mig-29 fighters from the Kubinka Air Base near Moscow paid a goodwill visit to Finland. This was the first time such a modern Soviet fighter had ever been seen in the flesh, and its behavior excited a lot of interest. Flown by pilots of the VVS, the Soviet Air Force, the 4 aircraft put on a pleasant little display, but one that gave no hint of the Mig-29's capabilities. And everyone remained in ignorance of its impressive avionics and fire control system. The world still thought of the Soviet Union as technically somewhat behind the West. The first time the world really noticed Soviet aircraft was when the AN-T-20, the Maxim Gorky, was announced as by far the biggest airplane in the world in 1934. On a fly-past over Red Square, an I-5 fighter off each wingtip showed off the giant's wingspan of 207 feet. But much more than this was needed to match the rapid buildup in military power by Nazi Germany. And the Soviet Union was caught completely off guard when Hitler unleashed the biggest army the world had ever seen, 190 divisions with over 5 million troops, on the 22nd of June, 1941. Operation Barbarossa had begun. Hitler's Luftwaffe was told to destroy the Soviet cities, and barrage balloons and sandbags did what they could to offer protection. Thousands of Soviet warplanes had been destroyed in the sudden onslaught, caught unprotected on the ground. But gradually the air defense group was built up as new Yaks and other fighters began to pour off the assembly lines. Output was maintained even when the factories had to be evacuated and the tools moved far to the east beyond the Ural Mountains. Many fighters, such as this Yak-7B, were painted with slogans, often showing that they had been paid for by the donations of funds from villages and collective farms. The fighter forces were augmented by gifts of P-39 Air Cobras, Hurricanes, and other fighters from the Allies. At final victory, the Air Defense Group's fighters and AA guns had shot down more than 7,300 of the invaders' aircraft. Once more, the Soviet homeland was safe. One of thousands of Soviet bomber pilots was Captain Yuchuk. He flew 820 combat missions, mostly in SB-2 bombers. He bombed forward positions, flew behind enemy lines, and defended Kiev and Stalingrad. He was shot down many times and believed dead, but he always made his way back to his unit. He had 2 sons. Both joined the modern VVS. They started their careers square bashing, like all other recruits.
Делай раз, два, кругом по разделениям делай раз, два, шагом марш!
Only by such basic training do tomorrow's flyers gain a sense of alertness, comradeship, and responsibility, while hard physical education sorts the men from the boys and ensures they are fit and tough. Even harder are the assault courses. In the Soviet Union, these are really lifelike and a test of body and mind. Some recruits are diverted to the PVO, the air defense of the homeland. Successor to the wartime air defense group, the PVO is a separate force, vast enough to defend the world's largest country with fighters and missiles. Radars are on the alert every minute of the year. Special twin-dish radars form part of the guidance system of the V-750 VK rocket, many thousands of which have been fired in training and in actual engagements. Every alert might be for real, and the rocket crews react accordingly. Near Sverdlovsk, on the 1st of May 1960, similar V-750 missiles shot down a U-2 spy plane flown by a CIA pilot. The missile has a range of up to 31 miles and is guided to its target by a dedicated ground-based radar, used in association with height finder and surveillance radars.
Передатчик! Есть цель! Есть распадальности! Есть распугу! Есть цель! Цель одиночная, без помех. Приближается. Цель противник. Внимание, цель уничтожить. Есть распадальности! Есть СРП по углу.
The V-750 system is today regarded as nearing the end of its working life. But it is valuable in training the thousands of incoming young soldiers who are eager to show what they can do. Though the V-750 often operates from fixed sites, it was planned as a land mobile system, and therefore exercises are frequently mounted in which the whole system is transported across rugged countryside. Every time, the launch crews strive to hone their skills and knock precious seconds off the time taken to get into action. In the computer van, a new recruit is instructed in the intricacies of the system by a corporal. This time, a night launch is scheduled, firing against unmanned target aircraft. The Soviet Union has more surface-to-air missile launches than the rest of the world combined. It has more than 5,000 tactical missiles, not including thousands more with mobile army and naval units. They include huge SA-4s, rocket SA-3s, and tactical SA-9s and 13s. Soviet boys who want to be pilots start their careers fighting with the controls of model airplanes. These boys are not just playing. For all of them, it is the first step on a long ladder. Later, they will join an aero club and train on Blanik gliders and powered aircraft. Sometimes they are thrilled as their instructors put on a show with single-seat aerobatic trainers designed by the Sukhoi or Yak Bureau. This quartet are Yak-53s. At about the age of 18, they may be lucky enough to be accepted as a VVS cadet, where some of them may find Captain Yuchuk trying them out on a flight simulator. By this time, those with no aptitude for flying have long since been weeded out. Soon comes a day of special excitement, their first flight in the L-29 jet trainer. The instructor gets in the back. The pupil in front will probably be just a passenger on this trip, but it is one he will always remember. From here on, each pupil knows he is well along the road to becoming a Soviet combat pilot. Enthralled, he is alert to everything on that first takeoff. Soon they join up with other L-29s. Progressively, the pupils will be doing more and more of the flying. Perhaps a year later, it is graduation day at a very special air school, the VVS Gagarin Higher Aviation Academy. From this time on, each man is not a pupil, but a VVS pilot. Every one of them pays at least one visit to the VVS Museum at Monino, where they see the fighters of the wartime heroes, turning their frequent political lectures into a real and immediate idea of patriotism. Outside, they see such famous aircraft as the M-50 supersonic bomber, the huge Mi-12 helicopter, and the BE-12 amphibian patrol aircraft. Soon, many young pilots find themselves at this operational conversion unit, where they learn to fly the supersonic Mig-29 bis. Here they learn to fly the Mach 2 fighter, and everyone watches their performance until they are proficient. Many flights are quite short, and the aircraft returns to base. Soon, all the pilots are fully qualified on the Mig-29. The partial pressure suit and helmet become as familiar as off-duty clothes, but overconfidence has to be watched for and avoided. Now they usually fly in sections of 4 or 6 and practice navigation at low level and various other tasks. Formation flying is frequently practiced, as it builds confidence and cooperation, and coordination between the pilots. After their flight, the aircraft are vectored back to the airfield, ready for the usual debriefing discussions, political lectures, and many other duties. Some pilots go on to this fully operational Mig-29 regiment in the Far East. The commanding officer is none other than Lieutenant Colonel Anatoly Uchuk, son of the wartime hero. Here, the aircraft are painted in frontal aviation camouflage, but they proudly carry the special nose badge showing that they are a distinguished unit. 2 aircraft are off on a practice mission to fire 57mm rockets and cannon against ground targets. They will fly at low level to the firing range. Over the ranges, arm the firing circuits, dive on the target, aim through the sight, and fire. Other MiG-21s practice air intercepts with the K-13A missile. Other pilots are picked for a more advanced aircraft, the swing-wing Mig-23. They go first to this conversion unit, where they fly the dual-control Mig-23 UM trainer. Takeoff is made with wings spread at 16 degrees. One of this pair is flown by the commanding officer, who comes from one of the Asian republics. At low level, complying with regulations, no mask is worn.
Высота та же, уголок получается меньше, правильно? Да еще рано.
Between flights, the CO and other instructors lecture in the classroom using models, diagrams, and other simple aids. They go to endless length to make sure every pilot understands at every stage.
Коротченко стреляет из Нурсов 2 прямых попадания, прямо в двигатель.
Here, the next mission will include a climb to 5,000 meters and, at between 550 and 600 kilometers an hour, a half roll, followed by the second half of a loop back to level flight. It is repeatedly demonstrated. Afterwards, the young pilots walk through the mission outside, holding models. Once qualified on the MiG-23, some may be posted to this important regiment of frontal aviation in a western military district. The CO here is none other than Lieutenant Colonel Viktor Yuchuk, brother of Anatoly. So huge is the Soviet Union that the two brothers are separated by 8 time zones. Viktor's regiment, which is also a distinguished unit, is equipped with a Mig-23 MF fighter. Here on the flight line, ground crew winch back a GSH-23L twin-barrel gun. The pilots put on their now very familiar flying clothing in the locker room. An armorer removes the protective cap from the nose of a K-13A infrared homing missile. Practice missions here go on day or night, in good weather or in bad. Sometimes the training is in air combat, sometimes in attacks on ground targets. two fighters take off in full afterburner, with wings at 16 degrees. Climbing for height, they retract gear, which extends the dorsal fin. They sweep the wings midway to 45 degrees and head for the air-to-ground firing range. Both are fitted with launchers for 16 or 32 rockets of 57mm caliber, and one carries a drop tank. G is pulled in a tight turn. Tactical exercises are vital to enable a pilot to take correct split-second decisions, to show initiative, frowned on 20 years ago, and to gain experience under all conditions. By this time, rocket firing accuracy should be excellent. Other aircraft put down free-fall general-purpose bombs, while a little later, several aircraft fire rockets in a salvo. Surveillance radars monitor their return to the airfield, guiding them in to make a fast run along the runway. Then they brake to land individually. Each aircraft streams its braking parachute to give practice necessary for short frontline airstrips. Throughout the year, all the VVS towers are manned, watching and controlling the flying. After each mission, the pilots go through debriefing, analyzing their performance, discussing the results, giving and taking criticism.
Потом я проконтролировал приборы, посмотрел, уже сам нет. И ты уже стал снижаться туда. Ну я сразу вернул.
Then comes a day off duty, and there are plenty of diversions. Comradeship continues off base with the airmen's families. This young lieutenant loves to make model aircraft, including a Western F-16 Fighting Falcon. Working with wood gives him great pleasure. There are few plastic kits in the Soviet Union as well. Now we visit another but very different, distinguished unit. The crew bus brings 7 men of the VTA, Military Transport Aviation, out to their powerful IL-76MD. Flying as co-pilot for the first time is a recently qualified cadet who has just joined the regiment. It's his first flight in the big airlifter. He has already spent hours studying the broad flight deck, but now he will see things actually working. With a state award, this is a proud unit, and the new man is eager to do well. The first mission is just a short air test before a big exercise. He does not have much to do except watch. Before an exercise, every man on the base is mobilized, and hundreds of troops and armored vehicles come in to be airlifted. Vehicles drive aboard under the tail turret with twin GSH-23 twin-barrel cannon, replacing an older gun previously fitted. Some Ilyushins swallow 125 paratroops or 140 infantry, while others take PT-76s, BMDs, and other armored vehicles. This time, it's a major paradrop exercise to capture and hold territory. The new man again flies as co-pilot, and this time he has various tasks allotted him. His aircraft carries a complement of paratroops. In the visual station, under the nose, the observer watches the drop zone come up. The dispatcher gives the green light for the heavy loads. These go out exactly to the split second. The captain retrims the aircraft. Just as each pallet hits the ground, its fall is braked by high-thrust retrorockets. Then comes the green signal for the paratroops. They stream out through the open ramp door. In seconds, the sky is filled. A few more seconds, and they will be in action on what had been the enemy's territory, complete with armor and artillery. They advance out from the drop zone. Meanwhile, the Ilyushins are landing back at base. Some bring back armor, as planned. The IL-76 is big, but it's nothing like the size of the VTA's newest and biggest airlifter, the AN-124 Ruslan. Here, an Aeroflot Ruslan is seen arriving at Farnborough, England. Its 24 big tires spread the load so well it can use unpaved airstrips, though its weight of 893,000 pounds makes it the heaviest airplane ever built. It has the world's biggest fuel capacity inside the world's biggest wing, yet that wing looks small beside the whale-like fuselage. Civil and military AN-124s can carry every airborne item needed to be airlifted in the Soviet Union. VTA Ruslans can carry the SS-20 intercontinental missile, complete with its transporter erector launcher, or a pair of the latest main battle tanks. Maximum payload is 150 metric tons, or nearly 166 US tons. Loads can go aboard either at the rear or at the front. Parking at the air show, the visiting Ruslan towers over everything else. A crowd gathers to watch the opening of the mighty nose, driven up hydraulically in a sequence which takes 7 minutes. For the moment, nobody has time to look at the Mig-29A fighter alongside. Then, as the flying starts, the nose ramp is folded away, the nose lowered, and the mighty Ruslan takes off, its size making its speed seem deceptively slow. The Antonov Design Bureau are proud of this immensely capable giant, and in fact would like to find some export customers. Today's successors to the old Air Defense Group are the mighty IA-PVO, the manned interceptors of the PVO. Initial training, as in the West, is done on simulators. The men of the IA-PVO fly fast, long-ranged interceptors, and for most pilots, their life ambition is to be selected for this conversion. Here, their dual-control flying classroom travels at over 3 times the speed of sound. It's the Mig-25U, trainer version of the famed Mig-25 interceptor, fastest combat airplane ever built. When you strap into the Mig-25U, you are already an experienced fighter pilot. You know that at 3,400 kilometers an hour, there's not much room for errors or even for hesitation. This conversion course aims to make you the master in all respects of this rather awesome 40-ton airplane, except for the operation of its radar, which is not fitted to the trainer. Then you go on to an operational Mig-25 interceptor unit, where you add knowledge about the radar and about the world's most powerful air-to-air missiles. On takeoff, you let go with the 2 most powerful engines of any fighter in the world. Long-distance surveillance radars help to vector the giant interceptors to within missile firing range of any target at any height. Over 400 of these interceptors are constantly on the alert. The biggest single part of the VVS is frontal aviation, the tactical air force. Now we are visiting a unit equipped with the Mig-27. Though related to the Mig-23 fighter, the 27 is a dedicated attack aircraft. The CO, Colonel Salnikov, is proud that they too can wear the Distinguished Unit badge.
Свой богатый жизненный опыт.
MiG-27s tend to spend their life at low level, often at the lowest level possible, putting down bombs, rockets, and precision-guided missiles on enemy ground targets. Their motto is, one item of ordnance, one target. Successor to the MiG-23 and 27 is this totally different aircraft, the Mig-29. This is a 29 UB trainer, first flown in 1977 and in frontline service since 1983. Like the MiG-25, it has twin fins, but it is now made of metal honeycomb and plastics composite material. It's smaller than the F-15, a little bigger than the F-16, but very much more powerful, and even more powerful than the otherwise very similar FA-18. The UB trainer has only a small ranging radar because of its second cockpit. From nose to tail, the MiG-29 is packed with electronics and other mission equipment. It has a striking new shape, mean and purposeful. Almost the whole of the exterior is covered in quick-access doors and panels, opening to reveal cunningly installed items serving many functions. In the left wing root is the lightest 30mm gun in the world. According to the deputy chief designer, if we'd known how unfailingly accurate the gun is, we'd have halved the ammunition capacity. Electronic warfare antennas can be seen along the leading edges. And on the sides of the fuselage can be seen the badge of the AI Mikoyan Design Bureau. The twin-wheel nose gear has a deflector to prevent stones and other objects hitting the aircraft. The single-leg main gears retract forwards, the big wheels turning to lie flat in the wing. At the rear, twin Tumansky engines give instantly responsive power, 18,300 pounds of thrust each. From the front, the big air inlets can be seen wide open for visual inspection of the engines. But as soon as the engines are started, the inlets are closed off by doors. The air then comes in from above, where it cannot be contaminated by snow, slush, and debris. On the front of the radome is the instrumentation probe. On top is the vital IRST, the infrared search and track system. Just behind is the smooth, bird-proof windshield and big canopy. The IRST dome contains an optical system which is also used by a precision laser used for gun ranging. 0-0 ejection seats are fitted, which, in the fighter, are topped by 2 video recording cameras. Not seen is the pilot's helmet-mounted sight, which Western pilots do not have. This is the MiG-29A single-seat fighter. The nose is filled by a powerful multi-mode pulse Doppler radar. A fire control computer automatically switches between the radar, infrared, and laser in a way that Western fighter pilots might be able to do in about 1993, 10 years after this Soviet fighter entered service. Everywhere, the MiG-29 is tough and as simple as possible. The best system, they say, is the one that we were able to leave off, but they were careful to add pylons under the wings for 6 air-to-air missiles of the new AA-10 Alamo family. Alternative loads include bombs, rockets, or tanks. Here, the electronic warfare antennas can be seen facing ahead, others pointing to the rear. Above the wing are long fairings filled with clusters of chaff payloads or bright infrared jammers. At the back are the extended chord twin rudders and slab tailplanes, which project well behind the variable jet nozzles. To show how much power this fighter has, it can pull up into a sustained vertical climb with a thrust-to-weight ratio of greater than 1 on only one engine. Between the engines is the cruciform braking parachute, while above and below are the air brakes. Altogether, the Mig-29A is some fighter. Now the scene shifts to 30,000 feet over the Arctic. A mighty Tu-95 or Tu-142, known to NATO as a Bear, is on a strategic reconnaissance mission. It has been amicably intercepted by F-4s of the Royal Air Force, whose pilots can hear and feel the mighty throbbing rumble of the Bear's great propellers up to a mile away. These are noble aircraft, first flown 34 years ago, and in production for many purposes ever since. Thanks to the use of 15,000 horsepower turboprops, they can fly missions lasting up to 20 hours and have an unrefueled combat radius of 8,300 kilometers, or about 5,200 miles. That's 5,200 out and 5,200 back. Unpainted, this D-type Bear proudly wears the badge of a distinguished unit on its nose. This later Bear D was intercepted by F-15s from Iceland. Both sides seem to enjoy such meetings. Under the belly is a gigantic surveillance radar, and various versions of these aircraft carry many species of reconnaissance or anti-submarine sensor or equipment for launching long-range cruise missiles. A crew member often watches the escorting fighters from the transparent upper cupola. The Bear H has a new nose and can launch the AS-15 cruise missile, which is estimated to have a range of nearly 2,000 miles. On this occasion, the intercepting F-15s came from the USAF Alaskan Air Command's 21st Tactical Fighter Wing. Admiral Kakimov said, "There is no hard or easy road for the Russian sailor, only the road of glory." Since the late Admiral Gorshkov came to power in 1955, the once unimportant Soviet Navy has become a mighty and powerful blue water force which flexes its muscles all over the world. More than those of any other navy, the warships of the Soviet Union are packed with radars and weapons of all kinds. Yet down below, the mess decks are home to crews drawn from Russia and also from all the other republics of the Soviet Union. More than anywhere else, these ships are a kind of United Nations. But everyone has to learn Russian first. One of the greatest ship classes in this Navy was led off by the Kiev, which combines the firepower of a large surface warship with the flight deck of a carrier. Inside the Kiev, crew members man the central control room, nerve center of dozens of radars and weapon systems. Meanwhile, pilots of the AVMF, the Naval Air Force, walk out to their Yak-38 jump jets. These versatile machines can act as fighters, attack, or reconnaissance aircraft. They extend the range of the fleet beyond even that possible with its multitude of guns, rockets, and guided missiles. old Tu-4 bombers are among those sometimes downed by surface-to-air missiles, fitted with proximity fuses. Large rockets are consumed by the thousand. There are also plenty of older patterns of torpedo to be used in practice missions. Biggest weapon of all are the rocket turbojet and ramjet-powered cruise missiles, most of which can blow a ship clean out of the water. Such missiles can be fired by almost all surface warships and by a large proportion of the submarines. Altogether, the Soviet Navy is now a force to be reckoned with. Yet another change of scene brings us to the land battlefield. Mi-8 assault helicopters are engaged in an exercise. Each carry 30 passengers, or usually 24 armed troops, or light vehicles driven in through full-width rear doors. No other helicopter of such size and power has been made anywhere in such numbers. There are over 10,000. To avoid landing, the helicopter often puts down an abseil rope. Then the assault force get down to the attack, and Soviet exercises are nothing if not realistic. Such realism was good training for the harsh and prolonged campaign in Afghanistan, where the heavy thump of the MiL helicopters has been heard around the clock for nearly 10 years. Mi-8s and gunship Mi-24s have worked together in large numbers to try to crush the Mujahideen tribesmen, often inserting Soviet special forces into rebel-held areas. The war has been bitter and often brutal, and the Soviet troops have devised even harder forms of assault course to try to mold character and instill a fighting spirit. The Afghan campaign has swallowed up vast quantities of Soviet troops, armor, and helicopters. Rightly has it been called the Soviet Vietnam. Back in the Soviet Union, big exercises are often held to apply Afghan lessons and help helicopters and ground forces to work closely together. BMP and BMD personnel carriers deploy troops. And overhead, the gunship helicopters keep the enemy's heads firmly down. Best of these air weapons has been the tough and versatile Mi-24, which carries powerful guns, rockets, guided missiles, assault troops, and all the sensors needed to fight by day or night. virtually everything on the ground is not only mobile, but almost always amphibious. Speed of maneuver and concentration is central to Soviet tactics. PT-76 light tanks and the many armored personnel carriers have to keep up with the momentum of attack. The attack helicopters are always present. Here, rocket launchers blast a distant enemy. In 1944, a Nazi prisoner said of Soviet rockets, "It was a nightmare. Everyone ran for his life." Those launchers could ripple away 16 rockets. Today's launchers fire 40, and with much higher accuracy. It looks even more impressive by night. Perhaps it is best seen from this end, not the enemy's view. Today, the Mi-24 is widely regarded in the Soviet Union as master of the battlefield. It has for years been regarded as a tank, enjoying special mobility. Here they collaborate with Mig-27s, Su-7s, and even Mig-25 interceptors, while Mig-21s fire giant 240mm rockets. But in wild Afghanistan, the story was rather different. Convoys lined the roads, bringing in wrecks of Mi-4s, Mi-8s, Il-28 jet bombers, and many other aircraft, often just the victim of crashes. On the other hand, it seems that the combat record of the Stinger surface-to-air missiles supplied to the Mujahideen was appalling. The missile often refused to fire. Sometimes the missile was confused by the intense infrared flares ejected by the Soviet helicopters. But all too often, it simply refused to complete the firing procedure and just stayed on its launcher. Here, an Mi-24 threshes past well within range, while Mujahideen fighters cursed and swore at Stingers that refused to launch. Even in far-off Nicaragua, the Mi-8 is in daily use, helping the government to fight the Contra rebels. The Mi-8 and this Mi-25, export version of the Mi-24, are regarded as key weapons in this theater. Their tough design was specially created for such austere environments. back to sunny Farnborough for a brief workout by a Mig-29A. The published takeoff run is only 240 meters, or 787 feet. The Mikoyan test pilot shuts down the engines and lets speed bleed off until he does a tail slide. Not only an air show stopper, this can be extended into a hovering maneuver which confuses enemy Doppler radars, which rely on the relative speed of the target. No speed, confused enemies. Western test pilots who watched these displays agreed the pilots were nowhere near their limits and had absolute confidence in the MiG's ability to do anything. Turns at 10G could be sustained without loss of height. You could come past at just on 100 knots at 30 degrees alpha and then pull up into a vertical climb. How about a sustained knife-edge run the whole length of the runway? Unnatural attitudes? The Mig-29 doesn't have any. The pilots especially like doing derry turns, where you flick from left turn to right turn via the inverted position. At last, to the crowd's disappointment, the MiG was on the approach, streaming the cruciform brake chute before touching the runway. Red Star, carried on one of the mightiest air forces in the world.